British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is on course to overwhelmingly win the election. This is according to exit polls. Britons took to the polls on Thursday. Our correspondent Ollie Barrett joins me now from London. Ollie, I believe that counting is almost done.
Yeah, we are nearly there, and we can confirm now that Boris Johnson's Conservative Party have won a majority in the UK general election. You need 326 seats to get that majority in the House of Commons, given the 650 constituencies that have been voting up and down the UK. And as of right now, the Conservatives have already won 355, with about another 15 results still to come in. So we think that Boris Johnson is going to have a majority in the region of about 80 seats. That is very significant indeed. We haven't seen a majority like that for a British Prime Minister since the 2000s and the era of Tony Blair. So a significant win for Boris Johnson, and that's why he is already describing it as a mandate that has been handed to him by the British people.
And hopefully he can break the Brexit deadlock as a result of this win.
Well, that was a large part of his election campaign. He really distilled his campaigning into that core message that he would be the man, the Conservatives would be the party who could, in his words, get Brexit done. The fact that he has this significant majority now means that it is pretty much certain that Britain will leave the European Union on the 31st of January, as has been planned since the last delay to the Brexit process. He has a deal that's already been reached with the European Union, so he does now just have to get it through the House of Commons, and with that majority in place he will be able to do that. It doesn't mean that Brexit is over or done and dusted. He will then head into a transition period with the UK in terms of EU membership, and he insists he can get a trade deal done with the European Union by the end of next year. That is going to be his real challenge, because trade experts say that is a really tall order. So the first stage of Brexit will be done. Britain will come out of the European Union, but let's not kid ourselves that this is an issue that's suddenly going to disappear from public discourse here in the UK or further afield.
Well, of course, I mean, looking at where matters currently stand now, one would actually say, Ollie, that it appears as though the Brits did not buy into the Labour Party's overwhelming promises. Remember those promises that were articulated leading up to the elections?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of reasons that the British people didn't buy into the Labour Party this time around, and that may be one of them. That idea that many British voters, and the polling bore this out, just didn't quite buy the manifesto that was being offered to them by the Labour Party, the huge spending, the huge promises, even if they did like some of those or many of those individual promises. Also the issue of Jeremy Corbyn, the leader himself. The polls showed he was incredibly unpopular going into this campaign, and activists up and down the country for the Labour Party reported that doorstep after doorstep they were just being told by voters, I can't vote for this man. And then the Brexit issue as well. I think voters have punished the Labour Party for not having clarity on Brexit, and having a leader who also said he would remain neutral in a second Brexit referendum. Clearly voters have decided that it is time to move on, and that Boris Johnson is the man that can best do that. And the Conservatives have won seat after seat after seat from the Labour Party in places that have been voting Labour for decades, but which voted for Brexit in 2016.
Talk to me about this, Ollie. A lot of times Boris Johnson has been compared to one such Donald Trump. Do you think that that's a fair analysis of the individual going into it? And this is just speaking about the electorate that went in to vote for this individual, in terms of what kind of an electorate we're dealing with.
I think that's such an interesting question, because there are certainly parallels between the two men. There are parallels in some of the ways that Boris Johnson campaigned here in the UK. Many people describe Boris Johnson as a populist in some of the similar ways that we see from Donald Trump. Some of Boris Johnson's critics have accused him of avoiding media scrutiny and questions in the way that they say Donald Trump does as well. But the parallels don't go all the way. There are many ways in which these are two very different men men indeed. Boris Johnson's insisted you do need to have control over immigration, but he's always said he's pro-immigration. He wants people with talent, in his description, to come to the UK. He's talked in the past about an amnesty for illegal immigrants. These are the type of things you would never hear US President Donald Trump suggesting. So in terms of their politics, there are actually quite large differences between the two men, but in terms, some would say, of character, in the way they hold themselves and in the way they deal with the media, in terms of some of their elements of populism, many people would say that there are similarities.
Ollie Barrett, thanks a lot for joining us this morning, giving us the latest in terms of what's happening in the UK as the counting continues, almost wrapped up, and it looks as though Boris Johnson is taking it quite comfortably. With that, let's check